Yeah, I picked up a lunchbox a while back. I think it's about time to do some work on it. Go ahead and restore it a little bit, turn it into a runner. Um, this is an old original lunchbox with the mechanical speed control and 75 megahertz receiver. That's all going to stay. I'm mostly going to clean it up really good, kind of neaten up this wiring. It's already been updated with oil shocks in the front. The rear still got the friction dampers. I'm not going to really mess with that too much. It has that suspension locked out here, right here, where it would the axle would rotate up. I'm going to probably leave that there. I'm going to have to order the motor mount and a pinion, but other than that, it seems real complete. Today I'm just going to focus on pulling this rear axle off and rebuilding that, cleaning it up real good, replacing the bushings with with bearings. I can feel that it feels kind of stiff in there, even with no motor attached. So we'll see what that looks like. Alright, first thing I've done is removed the lower shock mounts on both sides of the axle. On the other side, I've already removed this screw right here, where they've got where he had the suspension locked out. I removed the two screws in the bottom of the under guard here. You could remove this whole piece to get at it better, but I was able to get up in here to get to the screws to remove this piece right here where the axle mounts. Alright, so I'm able to get that. I can slide that axle mount out like so. Okay. I've got my axle here. I'm going to set the chassis aside. Alright. I'm going to remove the wheelie bar first before I split the gearbox. I'm going to pull the wheel adapters off. Okay, and I'm going to remove the pins now so I don't lose them. I'm going to put them in my tray. Definitely don't want to lose those. Other pin. So, yes, you can see that this does have the bushings. It's probably part of the reason this is so stiff and a little bit of slop in there. Alright, now I'm going to split the gearbox. It'll be interesting to see what we have in here. 15, 20 or more years worth of gunk. This hasn't been opened since I don't know when. I said I got this truck secondhand, so we're gonna see what it looks like. All right. Okay. This half of the gearbox, I'm just gonna have to push this bushing and this bushing out and replace those with the bearings I have after cleaning up the case. All right, let's see what it looks like in here. Okay, our counter gear. Okay, it's got the bronze bushing there and a plastic bushing. I'm going to replace those both with bearings. That nice and sticky. The grease has gotten real sticky in there on that. Could be why it was also feeling stiff. The gears themselves all appear in good shape. Yeah, these lunchbox gearboxes, similar gears is similar to like the Grasshopper and the Hornet. It's all plastic gears, but they're relatively big gears, really strong. Uh, Generally don't have a problem with those. Pop the other axle shaft out. And again, that bushing came right out with it. So I'm thinking that there's not much wear in here. It's all nice and sticky because of the old grease. So we'll clean everything up real good and reinstall everything. And these base bushings, can usually just push them right out from the other side. Look at that. Look at that old grease. It's nice and sticky. That bushing's just sticking to my finger. So once we get this cleaned up with fresh grease and bearings inside it, should be a lot smoother. Alright, so I've cleaned the gearbox halves. Got those scrubbed down. Scrub down the counter gear after pressing out the bushings. I've got my axle shafts scrubbed down. Pulled the gears off the ends there to clean up everything real good. Get rid of all the old grease. The one side of your axle is going to have this spacer. Make sure you don't lose that. Next, you got to pull the differential apart. These gears just slip out with their shafts. Okay, once you get all three spider gears out, you can pull that center shaft out of this gear. Make sure you don't lose that. Pull the shafts out of your spider gears, and then you can go take those, get all the old grease cleaned up off of those. Alright, I've got everything washed and dried. I've got my bearings together here. I've got 5 by 11 by 4 millimeter bearings and 1 5 by 8 by 2.5 millimeter bearing. Okay, we'll start by taking the counter gear. We're going to press the small bearing in the one end. Make sure it goes in nice and straight and flush. And you're going to mount your other bearing on the other side. I'm going to take the gearbox half. So go on the right side of the truck. Take 2 of your bearings. One gets pressed inside the gearbox here, and one at the outside. Okay. Next, you're going to take your shaft and put it through the bearings. Okay. Go ahead and apply some grease to that gear. You don't need a lot of grease on it. You just want to coat the surface. You don't want to cake it on there to where it's going to cause a lot of drag. Just get a little bit on the surface. Okay. I've got my counter gear. A little bit of grease on that as well. This shaft will either be stuck in this half of the gearbox or that half. Either way, go ahead and install your gear on that shaft. I'm going to start putting the other side together. On this one, again, you want to grease a little bit of grease on the surface of the gear. This side, the side that goes on the left side of the truck, is the side that needs that spacer. Make sure you get the spacer on. And 2 bearings, one on the outside edge, outside of the axle, one on the inside pocket. Press them in nice and good, nice and tight, all the way in. Install your gear and shaft. Okay. Now we can start working on putting this differential together. I've got, again, a little bit of grease on the shafts for the spider gears. And those spider gears go right inside just like this. There is a slot where the shaft will ride. You're going to get a little bit of grease on the gears themselves, on the teeth. And go ahead and install the other three. Again, a little bit of grease on the shaft. And put them in the slots. Now a little bit of grease on the center shaft goes inside that differential. Okay. And you want to run some grease on this outer ring gear here. Again, you don't need a lot of grease, but you want to coat that surface. Okay. I have to slip this gear off here a little bit. There's a little hole in the end of the axle where that pin will go. Help center that gear. Get this gear back on there. Okay. And then you're going to have to close up the gearbox. Okay, everything's nice and tight, closed up. And we're going to install the 3 screws that hold the gearbox together. You want these tight, but you don't want to over tighten them and strip the gearbox. Alright, next reinstall the wheelie bar. And that's also the 4th screw to hold the gearbox together. Okay, now your axle pins. Install the pins into your axle, and then your wheel adapters. Press those on. Okay, so they snap in place. And now it's done. Now you just have to reinstall it back on the truck. Should run a lot smoother, a little and more efficient, and less wear and tear on everything. Thanks for watching. Go ahead, like and subscribe. I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.